What if the healing you've been searching for has been waiting inside you all along? In the depths of an ancient forest, a young man discovered 8 secrets that transformed everything he knew about health, about suffering, about being alive. These aren't modern techniques. They've been whispered across centuries, practiced in monasteries, taught by masters who understood something we've forgotten. This is Kai's story, but it might also be yours. He lived in a village lost between mountains, where ancient trees stood watch and a river sang without end. He knew simple contentment, morning light on water, work that satisfied his hands, his mother's warm cooking. Then something inside him began to fade. The illness came gradually, like autumn becoming winter. Nothing helped. Not the village remedies, not prayers, not hope itself. Until the elders spoke a name. Master Yu, the hermit of legend, the one who knew the old ways of healing. Before we follow Kai on his journey, find somewhere comfortable, a soft blanket, a quiet corner, dim lights if you can. If it feels right, share in the comments where you're listening from, your city, the time of day, what brought you here tonight. Someone in Tokyo is listening at dawn, someone in London during lunch, someone in Sao Paulo before sleep. We're breathing together across this turning world. You have nowhere else to be for the next few hours. And so, with the first light of dawn, Kai left everything he knew behind. Kai walked for days through forests that grew older with each mile. His body weakened. Each step became effort, each breath a small victory. At night beneath unfamiliar stars, doubt crept in. What if this Master Yu didn't exist? What if the elders had given him false hope? But the forest itself seemed to guide him. Ancient trees stood like silent watchers. Light filtered green and gold through leaves that had seen centuries pass. One fevered night, sheltering from rain in a shallow cave, Kai dreamed of a dragon circling above him, speaking in distant thunder, "Follow the hidden path." When he woke, he found symbols carved into stones, ancient markers, leading him higher into mountains, where air grew thin and his legs trembled with exhaustion. More than once he thought his body might give out on that nameless slope. Then, cresting a final ridge, he saw it. A small cabin among ancient pines, smoke rising from its chimney. Before he could knock, the door opened. An old man stood there, eyes deep as mountain lakes, white beard flowing, presence timeless and steady. "You've traveled far, young Kai," he said, voice warm as fire. "I am you. Come." Inside, Master Yu prepared tea. They sat in warm silence. "Healing is not something I give you," the old master said softly. "It's something you remember." That night, Kai slept deeply. At dawn, Master Yu waited in the garden. He gestured to a place among the plants and flowers. We begin with breath. Master Yu rose with the sun and led Kai through a wooden door at the back of the cabin. Beyond it lay a garden, unlike any Kai had seen, not orderly rows of vegetables, but a living tapestry of flowers, herbs, and fruit trees, growing in wild harmony. Morning dew clung to petals. Birds sang from hidden branches. The air smelled of jasmine and fresh earth. "Sit," Master Yu said, gesturing to a smooth stone beneath a flowering plum tree. He settled onto another stone across from Kai, his movements unhurried, deliberate, as if he had all the time in the world. "The first key," the old master began, "is the simplest." He paused, eyes twinkling. "And the hardest." Kai waited, uncertain what to expect. "Tell me, Kai, how many breaths have you taken today?" The question caught Kai off guard. He opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. How many breaths? He had no idea. Dozens? Hundreds? He'd never counted, never noticed, never thought to pay attention. "I don't know," he admitted quietly. Master Yu nodded as if this was exactly the answer he'd expected. "You've been breathing since the moment you were born. Thousands upon thousands of breaths every single day, but you've never truly felt one." He leaned forward slightly. "Most people live their entire lives this way, Kai, breathing without awareness, alive, but not present for their own aliveness." A breeze moved through the garden, rustling leaves, carrying the scent of herbs Kai couldn't name. "Today," Master Yu said, "you will learn to breathe." Master Yu settled more deeply into his seated position, his spine straight but relaxed, hands resting gently on his knees. "Breath is the bridge between body and spirit," he said. "It's the one thing that connects your inner world to the outer world, the conscious to the unconscious, the you that thinks to the you that simply is." Kai tried to understand, but the words felt abstract, distant. "Don't try to grasp it with your mind," Master Yu said, as if reading Kai's thoughts. "Feel it with your body." He placed one hand on his own chest. "Close your eyes." Kai closed his eyes. Immediately, his other senses sharpened, the warmth of morning sun on his face, the stone cool beneath him, the symphony of bird calls surrounding them. "Breathe in through your nose." Master Yu's voice came soft and steady. Slowly, feel the air entering your nostrils, cool and fresh. Feel it traveling down into your chest, filling your lungs. Notice your chest rising, your belly expanding. Kai inhaled. For the first time in his life, he actually paid attention to what breathing felt like, the subtle coolness at his nostrils, the expansion in his chest, the slight stretch in his ribs. "Now release," Master Yu continued. "Slowly, feel the air leaving your body, warm now, carrying with it what you no longer need. Feel your chest falling, your belly softening. Kai exhaled. The breath left him in a slow stream, and something inside seemed to release with it, a tension he hadn't known he was holding. Again, Master Yu said, and again. There's nothing to achieve here, Kai. Nothing to accomplish. Simply breathe and notice that you're breathing. Kai continued, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. At first it felt strange, this deliberate attention to something so automatic. His mind began to wander almost immediately. He thought about his village, his family, his illness. He wondered what he should cook for dinner, whether his mother was worried, how long he'd need to stay here. Then he caught himself. He'd lost track of his breathing entirely. Frustration rose in his chest. He couldn't even focus on breathing for more than a few moments. This simple thing, and already he was failing. Your mind wandered, Master Yu said gently, without opening his own eyes. This is natural. The mind is like a puppy, playful, curious, constantly distracted. It wanders, because that's what minds do. He paused. The practice isn't to stop your mind from wandering. The practice is to notice when it wanders, and to gently, without judgment, without frustration, bring your attention back to your breath. Each time you return, the old master continued, that is the practice. Not staying perfectly focused, returning again and again, 1,000 times if necessary. Each return is a victory, not a failure. Something in Kai softened at these words. He took another breath, deliberately, consciously. In, out. His mind wandered to his aching legs. He noticed. He returned to his breath. In, out. His mind jumped to worry about his health. He noticed. He returned. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Kai couldn't tell. Gradually, something began to shift. The spaces between thoughts grew longer. His breathing deepened without effort. His body, which had been tense and uncomfortable, began to soften. He felt his shoulders drop away from his ears, felt his jaw unclench, felt muscles he didn't know were tight begin to release, like ice melting under warm sun. And then, unexpectedly, tears came. Not sad tears, but something else. A release, a relief, so profound, it had no words. For months he'd been fighting his illness, fighting his fear, fighting the tension in his body and the worry in his mind. Now, just breathing, just allowing himself to be exactly as he was in this moment, something ancient and knotted inside him began to loosen. The tears flowed silently down his cheeks. He didn't wipe them away. He just kept breathing. In, out, simple, present, alive. Master Yu said nothing, but Kai felt his presence, steady, compassionate, holding space for whatever Kai was experiencing without needing to fix it or explain it or make it stop. Time became strange, elastic. Kai lost track of how long they'd been sitting. The sun moved across the sky. Shadows shifted. Birds came and went. And through it all, breath, simple, constant, the most ordinary miracle. The morning had turned to afternoon, though Kai only knew this from the angle of light filtering through the plum tree's branches. He'd been breathing, simply breathing, for hours, and those hours had passed like moments. Master Yu sat beside him in complete stillness, not instructing anymore, just being present. His presence wasn't intrusive or demanding. It was like the presence of the stone Kai sat upon, or the tree above them. Simply there, steady, asking nothing. Kai's awareness began to expand beyond his own breath. He noticed the rhythm of wind moving through leaves. Wasn't that also breathing? The garden inhaling and exhaling. He noticed flowers opening toward the sun, their petals unfurling like lungs expanding. He noticed the earth beneath him, porous and alive, breathing through countless invisible spaces between soil particles. Everything was breathing. The realization didn't come as a thought, but as a direct experience, felt in his body before his mind could name it. He was breathing, yes, but he was also being breathed by the same force that moved through leaves and flowers and earth, through birds and clouds, and the vast turning world. The boundary between himself and the garden began to blur. Not in a frightening way, but in a way that felt like coming home, like remembering something he'd always known, but had forgotten. He wasn't separate from this. He'd never been separate from this. His illness, that darkness that had been stalking him for months, that heaviness in his chest and fog in his mind, it was still there. But it felt different now, lighter, not gone but somehow held differently, like a stone he'd been clenching in his fist that he could now hold loosely in an open palm. The illness wasn't him. It was something moving through him, like breath moving through lungs, like wind moving through trees, temporary, changing, not the whole truth of who he was. Master Yu finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper, as if anything louder might shatter the delicate peace that had settled over them. Do you feel it, Kai? The aliveness in everything. Kai nodded slowly, unable to find words. This is what we forget, the old master said. We think we're separate from nature, from each other, from life itself. But breath reminds us, every inhale is the world entering you. Every exhale is you joining the world. You and the garden, breathing together. He let silence return for several more breaths before speaking again. Tomorrow we continue, he said. Tonight, rest in what you've discovered. Practice before you sleep. Practice when you wake. Just a few breaths, conscious and present. That's all. The healing isn't in doing something complex. It's in returning to what's simple and true. Kai sat alone in the garden as dusk painted the sky in shades of lavender and gold. Master Yu had gone inside to prepare the evening meal, but Kai wasn't ready to leave this place, wasn't ready to stop breathing consciously. He continued the practice. Inhale, exhale, notice, return. It felt different doing it alone, without Master Yu's presence, but not worse, just different. He was responsible now for his own attention, his own returning. Something fundamental had shifted in him today, though he couldn't quite name what. It wasn't that his illness had vanished. His body still felt weak, still carried the marks of months of sickness. But the fear had loosened its grip. The desperate, grasping quality of his suffering had softened into something he could meet with breath, with presence, with a kind of gentle curiosity rather than panic. When he finally went inside for dinner, the simple meal of rice and vegetables tasted more vivid than any feast he remembered. He ate slowly, breathing between bites, present for each flavor and texture. That night, lying on the thin mat Master Yu had prepared for him, Kai continued to breathe. Consciously, gratefully. Sleep came easily for the first time in months, and his dreams were filled not with anxiety or fear, but with breath, flowing like water, constant as tide, the rhythm that connected him to everything alive. When he woke before dawn, he was already breathing. Conscious, present, and somehow, mysteriously, the healing had already begun. Kai woke in darkness, the world still and silent. Something had pulled him from sleep, not a sound, but a feeling, a sense that the day was waiting. He rose quietly and stepped outside into the pre-dawn chill. The garden lay in shadow, shapes barely visible in the last of the night. And there, beneath the plum tree, sat Master Yu, motionless as stone, his form outlined against the slowly lightening sky. Kai approached without speaking, without breaking the silence that felt sacred somehow. He settled onto his stone from yesterday and simply sat, watching the old master, watching the sky. Master Yu's eyes were closed, his breathing so subtle, Kai could barely detect it. He seemed part of the garden itself, rooted, patient, completely at ease with the stillness. They waited together as darkness thinned to grey, as grey softened to pearl, as the first edge of sun touched the eastern hills. Birds began their morning songs, tentative at first, then growing bold. Kai kept breathing as he'd learned yesterday, present for this slow birth of light. When the sun finally cleared the mountains and spilled gold across the garden, Master Yu opened his eyes. He looked at Kai with that deep, seeing gaze and smiled slightly. You came without being called, he said. Good. The practice is already teaching you to listen. He shifted his position slightly, settling more deeply into stillness. Yesterday, breath, he said. Today, mind. Kai waited, curious and slightly apprehensive. His mind had been his torment for months. The endless worry about his illness, the spiral of fears about death and failure, and all the things he couldn't control. How could sitting still possibly help that? Your mind is like a pond, Master Yu began. Right now it's stormy, wind whipping the surface, waves crashing, everything turbulent and confused. You can't see the bottom. You can't see clearly at all. He paused, letting this image settle. We're not going to fight the storm. We're simply going to stop adding to it. We'll let it settle on its own. Kai frowned slightly. How? By watching, Master Yu said simply. Your thoughts are like clouds passing through the sky of your awareness. They come, they go. The sky doesn't grab them or push them away. It simply allows them to pass through. You can do the same. It sounded impossible. Kai's thoughts didn't feel like passing clouds. They felt like a swarm of bees, relentless and stinging. Try, Master Yu said gently. Close your eyes. Keep breathing as you did yesterday. But now, also notice your thoughts. Don't fight them. Don't try to empty your mind. That's impossible and unnecessary. Just watch. Kai closed his eyes, and immediately his mind erupted. Thoughts flooded in like water through a broken dam. Worry about his family, wondering if his mother had enough firewood, remembering he'd promised to help repair his neighbor's roof before he left, anxiety about his illness, fear that this meditation thing wouldn't work, concern that he was wasting time, hunger, an itch on his nose, wondering how long they'd sit here, memory of a girl from his village who used to smile at him, regret that he never spoke to her, worry again, always worry. He tried to push the thoughts away, and they multiplied. He tried to focus only on breath, and his mind scattered in a dozen directions. Frustration rose hot in his chest. You're fighting, Master Yu said quietly, without opening his eyes. I can feel it from here. Stop fighting. I can't, Kai said, opening his eyes in defeat. There are too many thoughts. They won't stop. Master Yu opened his eyes and looked at Kai with infinite patience. Let me tell you something, he said. When the Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree seeking enlightenment, do you think his mind suddenly went quiet? Do you think all his thoughts simply vanished and left him in perfect peace? Kai had always imagined exactly that, the Buddha sitting in serene emptiness. No, Master Yu continued. His mind was as loud as yours. Doubts came. You're wasting your time. This is foolish. You should give up. Fears came. You'll fail. You're not worthy. Memories came. Desires came, all of it. He leaned forward slightly. The difference is, he stopped arguing with them. He stopped trying to make them go away. He simply sat and watched them arise and pass, like waves on the ocean. Thoughts aren't the enemy, Kai, he said softly. Attachment to them is. When you grab a thought and hold it, turn it over and over, believe it's the absolute truth, that's when you suffer. But when you let thoughts move through you like wind through trees, they have no power to harm. Kai took a slow breath, trying to absorb this. Try again, Master Yu said. But this time, when a thought appears, just notice it. Name it if that helps. Worry, planning, memory. Then, let it go and return to your breath. Thought appears, you notice. It passes. Again and again. That's the whole practice. Kai closed his eyes once more. A thought arose. This won't work. He noticed it. Doubt. He named it silently. And instead of arguing with it or believing it, he let it drift past and returned to his breath. Another thought, I'm hungry. He noticed. Sensation. It passed. Breath. Another, what if I'm dying? This one had more grip. Fear flooded his body. His chest tightened. But he noticed this too. Noticed the fear, noticed the tightness, and instead of diving into the story of death and loss, he simply acknowledged fear and returned to breath. The thought didn't disappear. It circled back, tried again to catch his attention. But each time, he noticed and returned, noticed and returned. Slowly, gradually, something began to shift. Minutes became an hour, though Kai had no sense of time passing. The sun climbed higher. Warmth spread across his face and shoulders. Master Yu sat beside him, a steady presence, asking nothing. Thoughts continued to arise, planning, worrying, remembering, imagining. But the spaces between thoughts grew longer. His breathing deepened. His body softened into the stone beneath him. And then, without warning, it happened. A gap. A moment between thoughts where there was simply awareness. No content, no story, no worry, or plan, or memory. Just pure, open, spacious presence. It lasted perhaps 3 seconds, maybe less. But in those seconds, Kai touched something vast, a silence that wasn't empty but full, a stillness that held everything, a peace that had no opposite. Then thoughts returned. What was that? Did I do it right? Will it happen again? But even these thoughts felt different now, softer somehow, less solid, like they were written on water instead of carved in stone. Kai opened his eyes, and tears were flowing down his cheeks again. He looked at Master Yu, who was watching him with quiet understanding. The old master didn't smile or congratulate, or make any fuss. He simply nodded once, a small acknowledgement that yes, Kai had glimpsed something real. They sat together in silence as morning became midday, as shadows shortened and birds fell quiet in the heat. Kai didn't try to recapture that gap between thoughts. He simply continued the practice, noticing, returning, and found that the practice itself was enough. When Master Yu finally stood, his movements were slow and careful, like someone surfacing from deep water. Kai rose too, his legs stiff from sitting, his mind clearer than it had been in months. They prepared lunch together in the small kitchen, working in companionable silence. Kai chopped vegetables with deliberate attention, noticing the sound of the knife, the texture of each carrot and radish, the way his hands moved. Everything felt more vivid, more present, as if a film had been wiped from his eyes. They ate slowly, still without speaking. Kai noticed that the silence between them wasn't awkward or empty. It was full, rich, with shared understanding. They were communicating without words, present for each other, and for the simple act of eating. After the meal, as they washed dishes, Master Yu finally spoke. "The mind is like a muscle," he said, handing Kai a clean bowl to dry. "It learns stillness slowly, through patient repetition. What you touch today, that gap, that peace, it's always there, beneath the noise. You don't create it through meditation. You simply learn to recognize it." He dried his hands on a cloth and turned to Kai. "Practice this each morning," he said. "Sit, watch your thoughts, return to breath. Some days will feel easy. Some days your mind will be wild as a storm. Both are fine. The practice is in showing up, not in achieving some perfect state." That evening, after a simple dinner of rice and steamed greens, Kai sat alone in the garden as twilight settled over the mountains. He closed his eyes and began again, breathing, noticing, returning. It was harder without Master Yu beside him. His thoughts seemed louder, more insistent, more likely to pull him into stories and worries. But he stayed with it, patient with himself, remembering that each return was the practice, not the staying. When he finally opened his eyes, stars had appeared overhead, bright and countless. He felt tired, but it was a good tiredness, the tiredness of honest work, of attention fully given. Sleep that night came from a deep pool of peace. His dreams were quiet, spacious, and when he woke before dawn the next morning, his first thought was simple and clear: time to sit. On the third morning, after sitting meditation as the sun rose over the mountains, Kai's stomach growled loudly enough that Master Yu heard it from across the garden. The old master's face broke into a smile, the first truly playful expression Kai had seen from him. He laughed, a warm sound like water over stones. "Your body is speaking," he said. "We should listen." He stood and brushed dirt from his robe. "Come," he said, gesturing for Kai to follow. "Let me show you my other garden." They walked around the side of the cabin to an area Kai hadn't yet explored. There, tucked against the slope of the mountain and sheltered by tall pines, lay a sprawling vegetable garden, unlike any Kai had seen in his village. It wasn't planted in neat, orderly rows. Instead, everything grew together in what looked like beautiful chaos: tomatoes climbing beside beans, squash sprawling beneath fruit trees, herbs scattered throughout like green lace. Bees moved lazily from flower to flower. A small stream ran along one edge, providing water. Everything thrived in wild harmony, each plant supporting the others. "This is where your healing truly lives," Master Yu said, walking between the plants with obvious affection. He bent to examine a cucumber vine, his fingers gentle on the leaves. "Food is medicine, Kai, the most powerful medicine we have." He straightened and looked at Kai directly. "But most people eat poison mindlessly, not because the food itself is poison, but because they consume it without awareness, without gratitude, without presence. They eat while distracted, while worried, while rushing to the next thing, and so even good food cannot nourish them properly." Kai thought of his own eating habits back in the village, shoveling rice into his mouth while talking, barely tasting anything, eating because it was time to eat, rather than because his body called for nourishment. "Today," Master Yu said, "you'll learn to eat as if your life depends on it, because it does." Master Yu moved through the garden with the ease of long familiarity, pausing at different plants and inviting Kai to look closely at each one. "This is bok choy," he said, running his hand over the smooth green leaves. "It cools internal heat, supports healthy digestion. Your body has been running hot with illness. This will help." He moved to a patch of leafy greens Kai didn't recognize. Mizuna, peppery, alive. It clears the mind, brings chi upward, good for sluggishness, for depression. They walked to where carrots pushed their feathery tops above the soil. "Root vegetables ground you," Master Yu explained. "When your mind is scattered, when worry lifts you away from your body, roots bring you back to earth." He showed Kai ginger, explaining its warming properties, its ability to kindle digestive fire. He pointed out herbs: cilantro for cooling, basil for joy, mint for clarity. Each plant was a teacher. Each had gifts to offer. "We'll gather what calls to you," Master Yu said. "Listen to your body. It knows what it needs." They began to harvest, but Master Yu turned it into ceremony. Before picking anything, he paused, placed his hand on the plant, and spoke softly. "Thank you for your gift," he murmured to a tomato plant, heavy with red fruit. "You grew in sunshine and rain, and now you offer yourself to nourish us. We receive you with gratitude." At first, Kai felt awkward doing this. Talking to vegetables seemed strange. But Master Yu's sincerity was unmistakable, and gradually, Kai found himself meaning the words. "Thank you. I see you. I'm grateful." Something shifted in the act of harvesting this way. The vegetables stopped being mere objects and became life offering itself to life. Each tomato had grown from a tiny seed, had reached toward the sun, had drunk rain, and transformed it into this red sweetness. Each carrot had pushed down through dark soil, seeking nutrients, becoming nourishment itself. They carried their harvest to the kitchen in woven baskets, bok choy and carrots, tomatoes and ginger, fresh herbs that filled the air with their sharp green scent. Master Yu worked slowly, deliberately, transforming food preparation into a meditation of its own. He filled a wide bowl with cool water and placed the vegetables in it. "Watch," he said to Kai. "Feel the water on your hands, the texture of each leaf and root. Notice the colors. How many shades of green can you see? How does the red of a tomato differ from the orange of a carrot?" Kai washed the vegetables with attention he'd never brought to the task before. The bok choy leaves felt smooth and cool, slightly waxy. The carrots were rough with earth, and washing them revealed bright orange beneath the dirt. The water turned cloudy with soil, and Kai marveled at how soil and water and sun had conspired to create food. Chopping was the next meditation. Master Yu handed Kai a knife, well worn, perfectly balanced, and showed him how to cut with precision and care. "Listen to the sound," he said, as his own knife moved through a carrot with a clean, crisp snap. "Notice the smell that's released when you cut herbs. That's their essence, their medicine, being offered to the air." Kai chopped slowly, paying attention to each cut. The knife through bok choy made a softer sound than the knife through carrot. Slicing ginger released a sharp, warming fragrance that cleared his sinuses immediately. Cutting tomatoes, he watched their seeds and juice spill onto the cutting board, bright and alive. "Cooking is alchemy," Master Yu said, as he lit a fire in the small stove. "We take the elements, earth in the vegetables, water to cook them, fire to transform them, air to carry their steam, and we create nourishment. We're participating in the transformation of life itself." They cooked together, adding vegetables to heated oil, listening to the sizzle, watching colors change as heat worked its magic. Green deepened, orange brightened. Aromas filled the small kitchen, ginger's warmth, garlic's pungency, the earthy smell of cooking greens. Master Yu stirred the pot with deliberate slowness. "No rush," he said. "Food prepared in haste carries that energy. Food prepared with presence and care carries that energy too. You'll taste the difference." As they cooked, Master Yu spoke quietly, almost as if thinking aloud. "The Buddha taught that when you eat the whole universe," he said. "Think about this carrot. It held sunshine, the energy of the sun transformed into vegetable form. It held rain, which came from oceans, which evaporated into clouds, which fell as water. It held soil, which was made from rocks broken down over millions of years, from leaves that fell and decomposed, from countless lives lived and returned to earth. It held the care of the gardener, me, in this case, who planted and watered and tended." He paused, stirring. "When you eat this carrot, you receive all of that. Sun, rain, earth, time, care. The whole universe in one bite." Kai looked at the food cooking in the pot with new eyes. It wasn't just vegetables anymore. It was a story, a history, a gift from the living world. When the food was ready, Master Yu ladled it into 2 simple ceramic bowls. Steam rose, carrying with it all the fragrances of their cooking. They carried the bowls outside to a small wooden table beneath the eaves of the cabin, where they could look out over the garden and the mountains beyond. They sat facing each other, bowls before them, and Master Yu did something that surprised Kai. He simply sat, hands resting gently on either side of his bowl, eyes closed, not moving to eat. Kai waited, uncertain. After a long moment, Master Yu spoke, his voice soft and reverent. "We pause to acknowledge what we're about to receive," he said. "Not praying to a god or deity, but simply expressing gratitude to life itself, to soil and sun and rain, to the plants that gave themselves, to the hands that prepared this meal, to our bodies that will receive and transform this nourishment." He opened his eyes and looked at Kai. "Gratitude isn't just politeness," he said. "It's a way of truly seeing, of recognizing the web of connections that makes each meal possible. When you eat with gratitude, your body receives the food differently, more fully, more openly." They sat for another breath in silence, and Kai felt something he'd never felt before a meal, a sense of ceremony, of significance, of receiving something precious rather than simply consuming fuel. Then Master Yu lifted his chopsticks and took the first bite. Kai did the same, bringing a piece of bok choy to his mouth. And for perhaps the first time in his life, he actually tasted his food. Not just flavor, but everything, the slight bitterness of the green, the sweetness beneath it, the tender texture against his tongue, the warmth spreading through his mouth. He chewed slowly, as Master Yu was doing, and noticed how the flavors changed, as he chewed, how the ginger's heat built gradually, how the vegetables released their juices, how his saliva mixed with the food and began the process of digestion right there in his mouth. "Your digestion begins here," Master Yu said quietly, as if reading Kai's observations. "In the mouth, when you chew thoroughly, when you taste fully, you're already beginning to break down the food, to receive its nourishment. But when you swallow too quickly, barely chewing, you overwhelm your stomach and miss half the gift." They ate in silence after that, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was full, rich, companionable. Kai focused entirely on the experience of eating, each bite its own small universe of sensation and flavor. He noticed things he'd never noticed before. How his body responded to different foods. The carrot felt grounding, satisfying in a deep way. The ginger brought warmth to his belly, seemed to wake something up inside him. The greens felt clean, clearing, like they were washing through his system with gentle efficiency. "Notice your body receiving this," Master Yu said softly, between bites. "Feel how it responds. Your body has wisdom. It knows what it needs. When you eat with awareness, you can hear its guidance." And Kai could feel it. Some foods his body seemed to reach toward eagerly, while others it accepted more neutrally. Not because some foods were better than others, but because his body's needs were specific, changing, individual. The meal lasted perhaps 20 minutes, though Kai couldn't be sure. Time felt different when eating this way, expanded, present, unhurried. When his bowl was empty, he felt satisfied, but not overly full, a sense of completion rather than the stuffed, uncomfortable feeling he often experienced after eating in the village. They sat together after finishing, not rushing to clear the bowls or move to the next task. Just sitting, digesting, present for the aftermath of nourishment. "There's a difference," Master Yu finally said, "between fullness and satisfaction. Fullness is physical, your stomach stretched, uncomfortable. Satisfaction is something else, your body truly nourished, your needs met. When you eat mindfully, you learn to recognize satisfaction before you reach uncomfortable fullness." After a while, they stood and walked slowly through the garden, moving to aid digestion. The afternoon sun warmed Kai's shoulders, and he noticed how different his body felt now, compared to an hour ago, energized but calm, nourished in a way that went beyond just having food in his stomach. "That rice we ate," Master Yu said as they walked, "came from a farmer in the valley. Someone I'll never meet planted those seeds, tended those paddies, harvested that grain. The water that grew it came from rain that came from the ocean, that came from evaporated lakes and rivers across the world. The minerals in the soil came from rocks broken down over eons. Everything is connected." He paused by the tomato plants, touching a ripe fruit gently. "When you eat with this awareness, Each meal becomes a reminder that you're not separate from the world. You're woven into it, fed by it, part of its great cycling and recycling of energy and matter. Kai felt this truth settle into him not as an intellectual concept, but as lived experience. His body was literally made from food, from sunshine transformed by plants, from water cycling through the atmosphere, from soil that had once been mountains. He was earth eating earth, water drinking water, the universe tasting itself. Over the days that followed, each meal became a practice. Kai learned to cook, to prepare food with the same meditative attention he brought to breathing and sitting. He learned to listen to his body's subtle signals, what it needed each day, which foods called to him, when he'd had enough. His body began to change visibly. Color returned to his skin, which had been pale and grey for months. His eyes brightened, regaining the clarity that illness had dimmed. He felt energy returning, not the frantic, anxious energy of before, but a steady, grounded vitality that allowed him to work in the garden, to practice his breathing and meditation, to move through each day with presence. Master Yu watched this transformation with quiet satisfaction. "Food is medicine," he said one evening, as they prepared dinner together. But only when received with awareness, with gratitude, with presence. "You're not just eating better food now, Kai. You're eating differently, and that makes all the difference." Kai understood now that eating wasn't just about survival or even health. It was about relationship with the earth that grew his food, with the elements that made it possible, with his own body that transformed food into life, with the mystery of existence itself that allowed any of this to happen at all. Each meal was communion. Each bite was gratitude made tangible. And with each conscious, present moment of eating, he was weaving himself more deeply into the fabric of the living world. On the 7th morning, after their meditation and breakfast, Master Yu stood and said simply, "Today we walk." He gathered nothing, no bag, no supplies, just gestured for Kai to follow and set off into the forest behind the cabin. Kai fell into step behind him, curious about where they were going, what new teaching awaited. They walked in silence through ancient pines, their footsteps soft on the needle-covered path. The forest was cool and green, dappled with morning light that filtered through the canopy. Birds called from high branches, and somewhere in the distance, Kai heard a sound he couldn't quite identify, a constant murmur, like wind, but different. As they walked deeper into the forest, the sound grew louder, clearer. Not wind, water. The path began to slope downward, and the trees opened into a small clearing. There, flowing over smooth stones, worn by centuries of passage, was a stream, its water so clear, Kai could see every pebble on the bottom, every flash of sunlight catching the current. Master Yu led him to a flat rock at the water's edge and sat, patting the space beside him. Kai settled onto the sun-warmed stone, and together they sat in silence, watching the water flow. The stream moved constantly, endlessly, its voice a gentle conversation with itself, babbling over rocks, murmuring through deeper pools, singing where it cascaded over a small drop a few feet downstream. Sunlight danced on its surface, creating patterns of light and shadow that shifted moment by moment. Kai found himself mesmerized by the movement, by the simple fact of water being water, flowing, persistent, alive. They sat for a long time, just watching, just listening. Master Yu seemed in no hurry to speak or teach, content simply to be present with the water. And Kai, learning from the old master's patience, settled into the silence and let the stream teach him through observation alone. Finally, Master Yu spoke, his voice soft beneath the water's song. What does water teach? Kai watched the stream, considering. He saw water encountering a large stone in its path. The current divided, flowed around both sides, and rejoined seamlessly on the other side. No struggle, no complaint, no stopping, just adaptation. It finds a way, Kai said slowly. It doesn't fight obstacles, it flows around them. Master Yu nodded. Yes, water is soft, yielding. You can't grasp it, can't hold it in your fist. But this soft, yielding substance carves stone, shapes mountains, reshapes the entire face of the earth. He picked up a smooth river stone and held it in his palm. This stone was once sharp and rough. The water wore it smooth, not through force, but through patience, through persistent gentle contact over time. He set the stone back down. Water doesn't fight, he continued. It doesn't force. It doesn't insist on one particular path. It simply flows, always downward, always seeking, always finding the way forward. Kai watched a leaf float by, carried effortlessly on the current. Your body, Master Yu said, is mostly water. 70% water, flowing through vessels, nourishing every cell. You are a river, Kai, not a stone. He looked at the young man with gentle directness. But when did you last flow? When did you last move with ease, without resistance, without fighting yourself and the world? The question landed in Kai's chest with unexpected weight. He realized he'd been rigid for so long, rigid with fear about his illness, rigid with anxiety about the future, rigid in his body and his mind, always bracing against the next difficulty. Watch the water, Master Yu said. Breathe with it. Kai watched, breathing slowly. He let his breath synchronize with the rhythm of the stream, the inhale matching its constant forward movement, the exhale matching its release, over stones, and through pools. As he breathed with the water, something began to soften in him. He felt the rigidity he'd been carrying, the way he'd been holding himself together through sheer force of will, like a dam holding back a river. And he felt how exhausting that was, how much energy it took to stay rigid, to resist the natural flow of things. Water showed him another way, not weak, but flexible, not passive, but responsive, not fighting, but working with what is. The ancient teachers said, "Nothing in the world is softer than water, yet nothing is better at overcoming the hard and strong," Master Yu quoted softly. This is because nothing can compete with water in softness. He paused, letting Kai absorb this. Your illness made you hard, defensive, tight, but hardness breaks under pressure. Water never breaks. It yields, it flows, it adapts, and in adapting, it survives, and eventually prevails. They sat in silence again, breathing, watching, learning from the endless patient movement of water over stone. Then Master Yu stood and began removing his outer robe. "Come," he said simply. Kai looked at him, uncertain. "Come into the water," Master Yu clarified, already stepping toward the stream's edge. To understand water, you must be in water. Kai stood, removed his own robe, and followed the old master to the stream's edge. Master Yu stepped in without hesitation, and Kai did the same. The cold hit him like a shock. Mountain water, barely warmed by the sun, flowing directly from snowmelt higher up. His breath caught, his muscles tensed involuntarily, every cell suddenly awake and alert. But Master Yu was already moving deeper, the water rising to his knees, then his thighs. Kai followed, gasping slightly as the cold climbed his body, but also feeling something else, an aliveness, a tingling vitality that spread through him with the cold. Master Yu began to move through the water, his movements slow and graceful. He didn't walk normally. He flowed, letting the current inform his movement, working with it rather than against it. His arms moved in sweeping arcs, his body swayed gently, and he looked like he was dancing with the stream itself. "Don't fight it," he called to Kai over the sound of flowing water. "Feel the current. Let it guide you. Move with it, not against it." Kai tried to imitate the old master's movements. At first, he felt clumsy, self-conscious. He tried to stand firm against the current, and it pushed at him insistently. He tried to move quickly, and the water resisted, made every movement effortful. "Stop trying," Master Yu said, moving near him. "Let the water move you." Kai took a breath and softened his stance. He let his knees bend, let his body sway slightly in the current. And immediately the water shifted from adversary to ally, holding him, supporting him, showing him where to move. He lifted one foot and let the current help direct where it landed. He moved an arm and the water shaped the movement, made it rounder, more flowing. Slowly, he began to understand. The water wasn't trying to knock him down or resist him. It was teaching him to move differently, to let go of force and control, and find a different kind of strength in yielding. As he moved, something began to happen in his body. All the tension he'd been carrying in his shoulders, his neck, his jaw, his belly, began to release. The cold water seemed to wash it away, dissolve it, carry it downstream and away from him. He moved his arms through the water in slow circles, feeling resistance, but also support. He bent and swayed, letting the current show him how to be flexible, how to yield without collapsing, how to be soft without being weak. And then, unexpectedly, joy bubbled up in him. He started to laugh, not at anything in particular, just from the pure pleasure of being in cold water on a warm day, of moving freely, of feeling alive in his body in a way he hadn't felt in so long. Master Yu laughed too, a sound of delight, and splashed water toward Kai playfully. Kai splashed back, and for a few moments they played like children, sending arcs of water toward each other, the spray catching sunlight and creating tiny rainbows. This too was teaching, Kai realized, learning to be playful, to take joy in simple things, to not be so serious and heavy all the time. The water held no judgment about his clumsiness, or his laughter, or anything else. It simply flowed, accepted him, moved with him, taught him through direct experience what words could never convey. They stayed in the water until Kai's fingers pruned and his lips turned faintly blue, until he was thoroughly cold and thoroughly alive. Emerging from the stream onto the sun-warmed rocks felt like being born. Water streamed off his body, and his skin tingled everywhere, every nerve, awake and singing. Energy flowed through him, not frantic energy, but vital, clean, clear energy, like the stream itself. They didn't towel off or hurry back to the cabin. They simply walked slowly through the forest in their wet clothes, letting the sun and air dry them gradually. Kai felt lighter than he had in months, as if the water had washed away not just physical dirt, but something heavier, some burden he'd been carrying without knowing it. By the time they reached the cabin, their clothes were nearly dry, and Kai felt clean in a way that went deeper than skin. He felt fluid, flexible, renewed, as if he'd left an old, rigid version of himself in the stream and emerged as someone softer, more yielding, more alive. That evening, as they prepared dinner, Master Yu poured Kai a cup of cool water from the clay pitcher they kept in the cabin. Kai took it, but instead of drinking it quickly and thoughtlessly as he would have done before, he paused. He held the cup in both hands, looked at the clear water, and felt gratitude for this simple, essential element. He drank slowly, tasting the water, its coolness, its subtle mineral flavor, the way it felt flowing down his throat and spreading through his body. It was the same water he'd drunk all his life, but he'd never really tasted it before, never really appreciated it. "Water purifies," Master Yu said quietly, watching Kai drink with such presence. "Water heals. Water teaches." He poured himself a cup and raised it slightly, as if in a toast. "Remember this, Kai. You are water. When life gets hard, remember to flow. When obstacles appear, remember to yield and adapt. When you feel rigid and tight, remember the stream. This is not weakness. This is the way water shapes the world." Kai nodded, understanding now, not just with his mind, but with his body, which still carried the memory of cold water and flowing movement. That night, he fell asleep easily, his body relaxed and fluid, and he dreamed of streams flowing endlessly toward the sea, of water cycling from ocean to cloud, to rain, to river, and back again, of himself as part of that ancient pattern, flowing, changing, returning, always moving, never stuck, always finding the way forward. Kai woke in darkness to sounds he couldn't identify. Not birds, too early for that. Not wind. The air was still. Something else, rhythmic and deliberate, coming from outside the cabin. He rose quietly and moved to the small window that looked out over the clearing. Pre-dawn light was just beginning to soften the eastern sky, turning it from black to deep blue, and in that dim light, Kai saw Master Yu. The old master stood in the center of the clearing, and he was moving. Not walking, not exercising, in any way. Kai recognized something else entirely. His body flowed through forms that seemed to be part dance, part martial art, part prayer. One arm swept upward in a wide arc while the other descended. His weight shifted from foot to foot with liquid grace. He turned slowly, his movements so smooth they seemed to have no beginning or end, just continuous flowing from one position to the next. His body moved like water, like wind through trees, like clouds drifting across sky. There was no strain in his face, no effort visible in his limbs, just ease, just presence, just movement for its own sake. Kai stood transfixed at the window, watching. In the growing light, Master Yu's white hair and beard seemed to glow, and his movements created shapes in the air that felt ancient, sacred, as if he was writing something in a language older than words. The old master's hands described circles and spirals. His spine curved and straightened like a willow in gentle breeze. One leg lifted slowly, hung suspended for a moment in perfect balance, then settled back to earth, as the other began to rise. Everything coordinated with his breathing. Kai could see his chest expanding and contracting, could almost feel the rhythm of it, even from a distance. This wasn't exercise. This was something else. Meditation in motion, the body itself becoming prayer, movement, as a way of being fully present in the world. Kai watched until the sun cleared the mountains and filled the clearing with golden light, and still Master Yu moved, tireless and serene, completely absorbed in the practice. Master Yu completed a final sequence, arms gathering inward to his center, then pressing down gently toward the earth, and stood in stillness. His eyes, which had been softly focused on nothing in particular, shifted and found Kai watching from the window. The old master smiled and beckoned. Kai didn't hesitate. He stepped outside into the cool morning air, barefoot, still in the simple clothes he'd slept in. Master Yu waited in the clearing, patient as always, not hurried or impatient, despite having been moving for what must have been nearly an hour. "Your body wants to move," Master Yu said, as Kai approached. "Let it." Kai looked uncertain. "I don't know how to do what you were doing," he admitted. "You don't need to know," Master Yu replied. "Your body already knows. It's carried you your whole life, walking, running, climbing, working. Movement is natural to it. We've just forgotten how to move with awareness, with presence, with joy." He gestured for Kai to stand beside him, facing the rising sun. "We'll start simply," he said. "Just breathing and moving together. Let your breath guide your body." Master Yu raised both arms slowly in front of him, palms up as he inhaled. The movement was unhurried, deliberate, as if he was lifting something precious. When his arms reached shoulder height, he paused for a moment, then lowered them as he exhaled, palms turning down, pressing gently toward the earth. "Try," he said simply. Kai imitated the movement, raising his arms as he breathed in. Immediately he felt awkward, self-conscious. His arms felt stiff, jerky. He wasn't sure how high to raise them or how fast to move. His breath and movement fell out of sync almost immediately. "Don't think so much," Master Yu said gently. "The body remembers things the mind has forgotten. Trust it." He demonstrated again, and this time Kai watched more carefully, not trying to memorize the exact angle of the arms or the precise timing, but trying to feel the quality of the movement, the spirit of it. They moved together, arms rising on the inhale, lowering on the exhale. Again and again, finding a rhythm. Gradually, Kai's movements became a little smoother, a little less forced. He stopped trying to do it right and simply allowed his arms to float up and down with his breath. "Each movement has meaning," Master Yu said as they continued. Rising arms, opening to receive what the world offers. Lowering arms, releasing what you no longer need, returning it to the earth. He shifted to a new movement, his arms sweeping out to the sides and gathering back to his center. Opening, expanding your awareness, embracing all things, closing, drawing inward, finding your center, gathering your energy. Kai followed, and with each movement, he began to feel something awakening in his body. Muscles he'd barely used during his illness began to remember their purpose. His shoulders, which had been hunched and tight for months, began to open. His spine, which had curved forward in protective collapse, began to lengthen and straighten. Master Yu taught him to shift his weight from leg to leg, to feel his connection with the ground beneath him. He showed him how to turn his waist, how to let that turning move through his whole body like a wave. He demonstrated reaching and pulling, expanding and contracting, rising and sinking, all coordinated with breath, all done with awareness and presence. The Buddha walked, Master Yu said between movements. He walked for miles through the countryside, teaching. Each step was a meditation. He knew that the body is not separate from the mind. When the body moves with awareness, the mind settles. When the body is healthy and vital, the spirit can flourish. He paused in a standing position, arms at his sides. Your body is meant to move, Kai. Not to sit and decay, not to be ignored or pushed beyond its limits, but to move freely, joyfully, with purpose and presence. They practiced until the sun was well above the mountains, and Kai's body was warm despite the cool morning air. His muscles trembled slightly, not from exhaustion, but from being asked to work in new ways, to hold positions they weren't accustomed to holding. But there was no pain, only a pleasant sensation of effort, of life, moving through him. When Master Yu finally stopped and stood in stillness, Kai did the same. His heart beat steadily, his breath flowed deep and easy, and his body hummed with a vitality he hadn't felt in so long. He'd almost forgotten what it was like to feel truly alive in his physical form. The days that followed fell into a new rhythm. Each morning, before the sun rose, Kai joined Master Yu in the clearing. They moved through the forms together, sometimes in silence, sometimes with Master Yu offering gentle corrections or explanations, but always with presence, always with breath. At first, Kai had to think about every movement, had to remind himself constantly to breathe, to relax his shoulders, to soften his knees. The forms felt foreign, complicated, impossible to remember. But slowly, something shifted. The movements became familiar, then natural. His body began to remember the sequences without his mind having to direct every detail. He found that when he stopped thinking so hard, when he let his mind quiet and simply trusted his body, the movements flowed by themselves. It was like the water in the stream. When he tried to force the movement or control it too tightly, everything became stiff and awkward. But when he relaxed and allowed his body to move as it wanted to move, guided by breath and by the memory building in his muscles, everything became effortless. Kai began to notice changes in his body. Strength was returning, not the bulky, tense strength of someone trying to force their way through the world, but a supple, flexible strength that came from the core and radiated outward. His balance improved. His coordination sharpened. Movements that had seemed impossible in the first days became easy, then graceful. But more than strength, he was finding grace, a quality of movement that felt almost like flight, like his body was becoming lighter, more responsive, more alive. The illness that had weighed him down for so long was losing its grip. Not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily, like water wearing away stone, like dawn dissolving darkness. His body was reclaiming itself, remembering its natural state of health and vitality. One morning, perhaps 2 weeks after he'd started the practice, Kai arrived at the clearing before Master Yu. He stood in the center, feeling the earth beneath his bare feet, watching the last stars fade as dawn approached. He began to move. Not because Master Yu had told him to, not because he was trying to get it right, but simply because his body wanted to move, needed to move, the way a bird needs to sing or a river needs to flow. He moved through the entire sequence they'd been practicing, arms rising and falling, weight shifting, spine turning, legs lifting and settling, every movement coordinated with breath. And for the first time, there was no thinking, no trying, no effort, just movement happening through him, his body expressing itself, present and alive and whole. He finished the sequence and stood in stillness, breathing, his heart full. When he opened his eyes, Master Yu was standing at the edge of the clearing, watching. The old master was smiling, not a small, polite smile, but a full, genuine smile of deep satisfaction. "Now you understand," Master Yu said quietly. "You've stopped doing the movements. You've become the movements. This is what we're seeking. Not performance, not perfection, but presence. Complete presence in the body, in the breath, in this moment." Kai felt tears rising again. These practices seemed to open something in him that had been locked tight for years, and tears came easily now, releasing old sorrows and old joys alike. "Thank you," he said simply. Master Yu shook his head. "I taught you nothing," he said. "I only reminded you of what you already knew, that you are a body, that this body is meant to move, that movement is a form of prayer and celebration and healing all at once." Movement became part of Kai's daily rhythm, as essential as breathing or eating. Each morning he practiced the forms, and each morning they felt different. Some days powerful and energizing, some days soft and meditative, some days challenging and humbling. He discovered that different movements served different needs. When he felt scattered or anxious, slow grounding movements that kept his weight low and his connection to earth strong would settle him. When he felt sluggish or heavy, movements that reached upward and expanded his chest would energize him. When he felt disconnected from his body, simple walking meditation, slow, deliberate steps with complete attention would bring him back. His body had become a teacher, not just something to be commanded or ignored. It told him what it needed, and he had learned to listen, not with his mind, but with direct felt awareness. This wasn't exercise in the way he'd understood it before, not something to be endured or pushed through, not a punishment for the body or a way to force it into some ideal shape. This was relationship, conversation, partnership between his awareness and his physical form. And in that relationship, Kai found joy. The simple joy of being embodied, of having a body that could move and stretch and flow. The joy of strength returning, of health rebuilding itself from the inside out. The joy of standing on the earth in the morning light and moving simply because movement felt good, felt right, felt like what bodies were meant to do. One evening, as they sat together after dinner, Master Yu said, "You move differently now, not just in the morning practice, but all the time. When you walk to the garden, when you prepare food, when you simply cross a room, you move with awareness, with grace. This is not separate from the other practices. This is all one practice, being fully present in your body, in your breath, in your life." Kai understood. The breathing, the meditation, the mindful eating, the lessons from water, the movement practice, none of these were isolated techniques to be mastered and set aside. They were all aspects of the same fundamental teaching. Wake up, pay attention, be present, live fully in this body, in this moment. That night, Kai lay on his sleeping mat, feeling his body in a way he never had before, not as an object he inhabited, not as something separate from his essential self, but as the very means through which he experienced life, through which he touched and was touched by the world. His body, which had been ill and weak, was healing. But more than that, he was discovering it for the first time, not as a problem to be solved or a vehicle to be maintained, but as a living, breathing, moving expression of existence itself. And in that discovery, there was freedom and joy and a coming home he hadn't known he needed. After 3 weeks at Master Yu's cabin, Kai had settled into a rhythm of practice, breathing at dawn, meditation, mindful eating, movement in the clearing. His body had grown stronger, his mind clearer, but there was still a subtle, lingering weakness, a shadow of the illness that had brought him here. One morning, after their movement practice, Master Yu turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "There's another garden I haven't shown you," he said. Kai looked surprised. He thought he'd explored every corner of Master Yu's mountain home: the vegetable garden, the clearing, the path to the stream. What had he missed? Master Yu led him around the far side of the cabin, where a narrow path Kai had assumed was just a deer trail wound between moss-covered boulders and ancient pines. They walked single file, pushing aside low branches, stepping over roots, climbing slightly upward along the mountain slope. Then the path opened, and Kai stopped, breath catching. Before him lay a garden, unlike anything he'd ever seen, a hidden paradise tucked into a natural amphitheater of rock and trees. But this wasn't a vegetable garden or a flower garden in any conventional sense. This was wilder, more mysterious, almost overwhelming in its diversity and intensity. Plants of every description grew in carefully tended profusion: tall stalks with purple flowers, low-growing herbs with silver leaves, vines climbing up supports, roots visible where the soil had been deliberately exposed. Some plants Kai recognized from the forest, but most were completely unfamiliar, brought here from distant places, cultivated with obvious care and knowledge. The air was thick with scent, pungent and sharp in some areas, sweet and floral in others, earthy and mysterious everywhere. Bees moved among the flowers in drowsy contentment. A small spring bubbled up from between rocks, providing water that trickled through careful channels to different sections of the garden. "This is my pharmacy," Master Yu said quietly, his voice carrying reverence. "The earth's pharmacy. Every plant here is medicine." He stepped forward into the garden, and Kai followed, overwhelmed by the sheer abundance of life, the complexity of growing things, all serving purpose, beyond beauty alone. Master Yu knelt beside a plant with delicate white flowers and deeply cut leaves, his movements slow and respectful, as if approaching an old friend. "This is valerian," he said, touching the leaves gently. "She calms anxious minds, brings deep sleep to those whose thoughts won't quiet at night." He looked up at Kai. "Before you came here, did you sleep well?" Kai shook his head. For months before finding Master Yu, sleep had been elusive, interrupted, haunted by worry. "Valerian would have helped," Master Yu said. "Her roots, dried and brewed as tea, bring the nervous system into balance." He stood and moved to another plant, this one with distinctive purple cone-shaped flowers. "Here, echinacea. She strengthens your body's defenses, helps you fight illness before it takes root. If everyone in your village drank echinacea tea through the winter, fewer would fall sick." He led Kai deeper into the garden, stopping at plant after plant introducing each with the kind of intimate knowledge that could only come from years of careful observation and relationship. "Ginger root," he said, brushing soil away from a knobby rhizome. "Fire for digestion, warmth for those who run cold, clarity when the mind feels foggy. See how it grows underground, storing its power in the dark. That concentrated energy becomes yours when you consume it." Kai knelt beside him, touching the ginger root, feeling its firm texture, bringing his fingers to his nose to smell the sharp, awakening scent that clung to them. "Chamomile for gentle calming," Master Yu continued, moving through the garden like a curator in a living library. "Mint for mental clarity and digestive ease. Lavender for peace and sleep. Elderberry for immune strength. Nettle for vitality and blood building." Each plant had a story, where it preferred to grow, what conditions it needed, what gifts it offered in return for proper care. Master Yu knew them all intimately, spoke of them with affection and respect, touched them with gentleness. "Come," he said, gesturing for Kai to smell a particular herb. "Use all your senses. Smell, touch, even taste when I tell you it's safe. The plants communicate through these senses if we pay attention." Kai leaned close to a silvery-leaved plant and inhaled deeply. The scent was complex, slightly bitter, slightly sweet, immediately clearing his sinuses and sharpening his awareness. "What is this?" "Artemisia, also called mugwort," Master Yu replied. "Ancient medicine for women's health, for digestion, for clarity of dreams. Notice how just smelling it changes something in your body. That's the plant's volatile oils, medicine that enters through your breath." They spent the morning in the garden, and with each plant, Kai's understanding deepened. These weren't just random weeds or pretty flowers. Each one was a highly specific medicine, offering particular healing properties when prepared and used correctly. Master Yu handed Kai a leaf from a fuzzy-leafed plant and instructed him to chew it slowly. Kai did, and his mouth immediately went slightly numb, tingling. "This is what we call toothache plant," Master Yu explained. "The numbness you feel, that's its medicine. For pain, for infections of the mouth, the plant tells you directly what it does." "Plants don't hoard their medicine," Master Yu said as they sat together near the spring, watching water flow through the garden. "They offer it freely. That's their nature. A willow tree doesn't guard its bark's pain-relieving properties. An aloe doesn't hide the healing gel in its leaves. They give because giving is what plants do. They transform sunlight and soil into medicine and offer it to anyone with the knowledge to receive it." He stood and approached a tall plant with yellow flowers. "When we harvest," he said, "we do so with respect, with gratitude, taking only what we need." Master Yu placed his hand gently on the plant's stem and closed his eyes for a moment. "Thank you for your medicine," he said quietly. "I ask permission to take some of your leaves for healing." He waited in silence, then nodded, as if receiving an answer only he could hear. He showed Kai how to harvest, taking from the plant in a way that wouldn't harm it, leaving plenty for the plant to continue thriving, never stripping it bare or cutting carelessly. "Sustainable harvest is sacred harvest," he explained. "We're in relationship with these plants, not dominating them. They'll continue to give medicine for years if we treat them with respect. But abuse them, harvest greedily, and they'll die or stop producing. Simple." As they worked, Master Yu told Kai a story. "The Buddha's final meal," he began, his voice taking on the quality of ancient telling, "is said to have been a dish that made him gravely ill. Some say it was mushrooms, others say pork. The texts aren't clear. But what matters isn't what the food was. What matters is how the Buddha responded." Kai listened, hands stilling in their work. He was 80 years old, his body worn from decades of teaching and traveling. Master Yu continued. "The meal made him sick, and he knew he was dying. But his final teaching wasn't about blame or regret. It was about impermanence, about acceptance. He told his followers, 'All things pass away. Strive on with diligence.'" Master Yu carefully placed harvested leaves in his basket. "Plants teach us this same lesson," he said. "They die every season and return. They don't cling to life in fear. They simply live fully when it's time to live, and release fully when it's time to let go. They fear nothing because they understand their nature is. They are cycles, not fixed things. We are the same, though we forget." This truth settled into Kai deeply. His illness, his fear of death, all of it came from forgetting impermanence, from wanting to hold on to life as if it could be frozen in place. The plants knew better. Back in the cabin's small kitchen, Master Yu began teaching Kai how to prepare the harvested plants into usable medicine. Each method served a different purpose, extracted different properties from the plants. "For tea," he explained, placing dried leaves in a ceramic pot, "we use hot water to extract water-soluble compounds, vitamins, minerals, some of the lighter plant chemicals." He poured steaming water over chamomile flowers and covered the pot. "We steep, not boil. Too much heat destroys some of the medicine." He showed Kai how to make tinctures, soaking roots and leaves in alcohol to extract compounds that water alone couldn't reach. How to make poultices by crushing fresh herbs and applying them directly to skin for wounds or inflammation. How to mix herbs with oil or beeswax to create healing salves. "This is alchemy," Master Yu said as they worked, grinding dried roots with mortar and pestle. Taking what the earth provides and transforming it into concentrated healing. But the real alchemy happens in your body. These plant compounds interact with your cells, your organs, your systems in ways we're only beginning to understand. He brewed a specific tea for Kai, a blend chosen precisely for the symptoms of his illness. Astragalus for immune support, licorice root for adrenal strength, ginger for warmth and circulation, hawthorn for the heart. Drink this twice daily, Master Yu instructed, handing Kai the warm cup. Notice how your body responds over the coming days. This isn't instant cure. Plants work gently, gradually, supporting your body's own healing wisdom rather than forcing change. Kai drank the tea slowly, tasting the complex blend of bitter, sweet, warming, and cooling flavors. It didn't taste like medicine in the harsh, unpleasant way he expected. It tasted like concentrated earth, like the forest distilled into liquid form. Over the following days, Kai learned to brew his own remedies under Master Yu's watchful guidance. He learned to trust his senses. If a tea smelled off or moldy, don't use it. If a tincture separated strangely, something went wrong in the preparation. If his body reacted poorly to an herb, listen to that wisdom and discontinue use. You're learning to listen, Master Yu said one afternoon, as Kai carefully measured herbs for his daily tea. Not just to the plants, but to your own body. Your body is speaking constantly, telling you what it needs, what helps, what harms. Most people never learn this language, but you're learning it now. And it was true. Kai noticed that certain herbs made him feel energized and clear, while others brought deep relaxation and sleep. Some helped his digestion immediately, while others took days of consistent use to show their effects. His body was communicating more clearly than ever before, and he was finally listening. The changes were gradual, but unmistakable. The persistent cough that had plagued him for months began to ease. The fatigue that made every task feel monumental started lifting. His skin, which had been pale and dry, began to glow with renewed health. Master Yu observed these changes with quiet satisfaction but no surprise. The plants are working, he said, but really, your body is working. The plants are just supporting what your body already knows how to do, heal itself. Kai began spending time alone in the medicine garden, sitting quietly among the plants, just being present with them. At first, he felt slightly foolish. What was the point of sitting with plants? But as he settled into stillness, breathing among the growing things, something shifted. He began to feel their presence, not in some mystical, imaginary way, but as a simple fact of shared existence. They were alive, growing, breathing in their own way, transforming carbon dioxide to oxygen, drawing nutrients from soil, reaching toward light. And he was alive, growing in his own way, breathing their oxygen, eventually consuming some of them for medicine and nourishment, returning his own breath to feed their growth. The separation he'd always assumed between himself and the plant world began to dissolve. These plants were made from the same elements as his body: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, minerals from the earth. The iron in his blood came from the same source as the iron in the soil that fed these plants. The calcium in his bones was once in rocks, then soil, then plants, now him, and eventually would return to soil again. He wasn't separate from nature, observing it from outside. He was nature, looking at itself, healing itself, remembering itself. One afternoon, sitting beside the valerian plant, Kai understood something fundamental. Healing wasn't about fighting illness or forcing his body back to health through external intervention alone. Healing was about remembering kinship with these plants, with the earth, with the water and air and sun, with the whole living world of which he was an inseparable part. The plants weren't tools to be used. They were allies, companions, fellow participants in the great experiment of life on Earth. When he consumed their medicine, he was receiving gifts freely given by distant relatives who happened to photosynthesize instead of eat, who happened to grow roots instead of walk, but who were family nonetheless. That evening, preparing his daily tea, Kai moved with the same reverence he'd seen in Master Yu from the beginning. He thanked each herb as he added it to the pot, not speaking to some imagined plant spirit, but simply acknowledging the gift of its medicine, the generosity of its existence, the mystery of how dried leaves could help heal a human body. "You understand now," Master Yu said, watching him work. "The medicine isn't just in the plants. It's in the relationship, in the attention, in the gratitude and respect. A person who takes herbs mindlessly, seeing them as mere chemicals, receives some benefit. But a person who takes herbs with awareness, with gratitude, with recognition of kinship, they receive the full medicine, which includes, but transcends, the physical compounds." Kai drank his tea that night with complete presence, feeling it flow through his body, supporting his healing, connecting him to soil and sun and rain, and the patient wisdom of plants who had been offering medicine to humans for thousands of years before he was born, and would continue for thousands of years after he returned to Earth. And in that connection, he found healing deeper than the mere absence of illness. He found belonging, and that belonging was medicine for wounds he hadn't known he carried. One month had passed since Kai arrived at Master Yu's mountain home. His body had grown strong, his mind clear, his spirit settled. But Master Yu sensed there was one more teaching Kai needed before his healing would be complete. "One more journey," the old master said one morning after their meditation. They set out walking deeper into the mountains than Kai had yet ventured, following a path that wound upward through dense forest and over rocky outcroppings. The air grew cooler as they climbed, and the trees began to thin. After an hour of steady walking, they arrived at the mouth of a cave, a dark opening in the mountainside that seemed to exhale cool, mineral-scented air. Master Yu lit a small oil lamp he'd brought in his pack and led the way inside. The cave swallowed them into darkness, broken only by the lamp's small circle of light. Their footsteps echoed strangely, each sound magnified and repeated, bouncing off unseen walls. Kai whispered, "It's big," and his voice returned to him from multiple directions, overlapping and strange. They walked deeper until the cave opened into a chamber large enough that the lamplight couldn't reach its walls or ceiling. The darkness here felt absolute, alive, pressing close. Master Yu set down the lamp and settled onto the stone floor, gesturing for Kai to sit beside him. "Sound behaves differently here," Master Yu said, and the cave caught his words and threw them back, creating layers of echo. Every whisper becomes thunder. Every silence becomes cathedral. They sat in the darkness, waiting. Kai's eyes strained to see but found nothing, just blackness, so complete it seemed to have texture and weight. His other senses sharpened in compensation. He heard water dripping somewhere distant, each drop a small percussion, echoing through stone chambers. He heard his own breathing, Master Yu's breathing, the rustle of cloth when either of them shifted position. The silence between these small sounds felt enormous, expectant, as if the cave itself was listening. From somewhere in his robes, Master Yu produced something. Kai heard the soft scrape of metal on stone. Then Master Yu struck it, and the world exploded into sound. A singing bowl. Kai had heard them before in temples, but never like this. The tone that erupted from the bowl in the cave's darkness didn't just fill the air. It filled everything. The stone, the darkness, Kai's body, his bones, his skull. The sound was pure, singular, piercing, a note so clear it seemed to cut through reality itself. But immediately, it began to multiply, overtones emerging, like flowers blooming, harmonics dancing above and below the fundamental tone. The cave took the sound and amplified it, reflected it, wove it into something complex and alive. Kai felt the vibration in his chest first, his ribcage resonating with the tone, his heart seeming to beat in rhythm with the sound's pulsing waves. Then in his skull, the bones of his head vibrating sympathetically, creating sensations he'd never experienced. Then everywhere, every cell in his body responding to the sound, trembling with it, becoming part of it. He closed his eyes, though it made no difference in the absolute darkness. And with his eyes closed, something extraordinary happened. The sound became visible. Colors bloomed in the darkness behind his eyelids, deep purples and blues, then golds and whites, swirling and pulsing in patterns that matched the overtones he was hearing. The sound had texture now, shape, dimension. He could see it moving through space, could see the waves radiating outward from the bowl, bouncing off cave walls, interfering with each other to create standing waves of pure vibration. Energy moved through him with the sound, not his energy, but the sound's energy, or perhaps there was no difference. Old tensions vibrated loose and dissolved. Stuck places in his body that he hadn't even known were stuck began to release, opened by the relentless, gentle pressure of vibration. The sound lasted perhaps 30 seconds, though time felt meaningless in the darkness. Gradually, the fundamental tone faded, but the overtones continued, growing softer and softer, higher and higher, until they passed beyond the range of hearing. But they didn't disappear. They transformed into silence. And the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was alive, ringing, saturated with the memory of sound. It was like the silence after lightning, when the air still vibrates with electricity, even though the flash is gone. Kai sat in this living silence, his body still humming with resonance, and understood something he couldn't have understood before. Sound and silence are one. Master Yu's voice came soft through the darkness. They're not opposites. They're two faces of the same truth. The Buddha taught with words for 45 years, but he found truth in wordlessness. Sound arises from silence, returns to silence, and silence is never broken by sound, because silence contains all sound, all vibration, all possibility. Kai felt tears on his cheeks again, though he couldn't have said why. Something in him was breaking open, or perhaps finally healing closed. Master Yu struck the bowl again, and again the cave filled with sound, but this time Kai was ready for it, could meet it with less resistance. He let the vibration move through him completely, allowed himself to become an instrument played by the sound rather than a solid thing, enduring it. When the tone faded this time, the silence felt even deeper, richer, more textured. Then, Master Yu brought out other instruments. Kai heard them more than saw them in the lamp's dim light. A bell, small and bright, its tone cutting through the darkness like a silver thread. A wooden flute, its sound breathy and hollow, curling through the cave like smoke. Something stringed, maybe a small harp or zither, its notes cascading like water over rocks. A drum, its deep heartbeat throb resonating in Kai's belly and chest. Each instrument created different sensations in Kai's body. The bell's high frequencies seemed to clear his head, bringing sharp alertness. The flute's middle tones opened his chest and throat, made breathing feel easier and deeper. The strings touched something in his heart, not sad, not happy, just tender, open, vulnerable. The drum grounded him, connected him to earth, to his lower body, to primal rhythms older than thought. Sound is medicine, Master Yu said between instruments. Different tones heal different ailments, reach different parts of the body and spirit. This has been known for thousands of years. Sound breaks up stuck energy, realigns what's misaligned, reminds the body of its natural, harmonious state. He played the singing bowl again, longer this time, and Kai felt things releasing in his body that he hadn't known were stuck. Old pain in his lower back that had been there so long, he'd stopped noticing it. Tension in his jaw from years of clenching worry. Tightness in his shoulders from carrying burdens, both physical and emotional. The sound washed through him like the stream had washed over him, like water finding every crack and crevice, like gentle, persistent pressure that couldn't be resisted, only received. Old fear rose and dissolved in the vibration. Old grief surfaced and was released. Old anger that he'd been holding in his belly for years trembled loose and flowed away with the sound. Between each instrument, silence. And with each return to silence, the silence grew deeper, more spacious, more filled with presence. Kai began to hear things in the silence he'd never heard before. His own heartbeat, steady and strong, not just felt, but actually heard as a soft, rhythmic pulse. His blood flowing through his veins, a subtle rushing like distant water. His breath moving in and out, the soft whisper of air at his nostrils, the gentle expansion and contraction of his lungs. Deeper still, the earth itself seemed to be humming, a vibration so low and constant he'd never noticed it before, but which now seemed obvious, fundamental, the bass note underlying all existence. In the deepest silence, he heard everything. Not as separate sounds, but as one vast symphony of which his heartbeat and the earth's hum and the dripping water and Master Yu's breathing were all movements, all voices in a conversation that had been going on since the beginning and would continue until the end. This silence wasn't the absence of sound. It was the presence of peace, complete, total, absolute peace that made room for all sound without being disturbed by any of it. They sat for a long time in this ringing silence, neither moving nor speaking. Time dissolved. The darkness became friendly, intimate, like being held in the earth's womb. Kai felt safe in a way he'd never felt safe before, not protected from danger, but at peace, regardless of danger, at peace with the fundamental nature of existence itself. Finally, Master Yu stirred and lifted the lamp. "Come," he said quietly. "Carry this silence with you." They walked out of the cave into afternoon sunlight that seemed impossibly bright after the darkness. Kai blinked, momentarily blinded, then his eyes adjusted and the world came into focus. Everything seemed quieter than before, or perhaps Kai was simply more quiet inside, more still, more able to hear subtle sounds he'd always missed. He noticed birdsong, not just as background noise but as distinct voices, each bird singing its own song. He noticed wind moving through different types of trees, each creating its own particular rustle and whisper. He noticed his own footsteps on the path, the small sounds of cloth moving as he walked, Master Yu's steady breathing beside him. All of it was music. All of it was prayer. All of it was the same sound that had filled the cave, just wearing different faces, playing different instruments. Silence isn't the absence of sound, Master Yu said as they walked. It's the presence of peace. You can carry this peace with you always, even in the noisiest places. The outer world may be loud, but your inner silence can remain undisturbed if you remember what you learned in the cave today. That night, after a simple meal eaten in companionable quiet, Kai sat alone outside the cabin, under stars. He sat in silence, listening to nothing in particular and hearing everything. The night sounds, insects, distant owl, wind in pines, all wove together into a tapestry of sound that arose from silence and returned to silence, moment by moment. And beneath it all, that fundamental peace he'd touched in the cave's darkness, still accessible, still present, always available if he simply stopped and listened. This was a different kind of healing than the others, not healing of body or even mind, but healing of spirit, healing of the deepest part of him that had been wounded by years of noise and distraction, and forgetting to listen to the vast quiet that holds all things. In that silence, in that peace, Kai found himself home. Six weeks had passed since Kai arrived at Master Yu's mountain home, and his transformation was complete in ways he couldn't have imagined. His body was strong, his mind clear, his heart open. But Master Yu knew there was one final teaching that would tie all the others together. "Come," the old master said one morning. "I want to show you something." They walked into the forest deeper than they'd ever ventured, following what seemed less a path than an intuition. The trees grew larger and older with each step. The forest changed around them. The trees here were massive, their trunks so wide that 3 men couldn't circle them with outstretched arms. Their bark was deeply furrowed with age, thick with moss and lichen. The canopy far above filtered light into a green-gold dimness that felt both ancient and sacred. The air itself felt different, thick with presence, heavy with time, saturated with the accumulated life force of centuries. Sound behaved strangely, muffled and close, as if the forest was absorbing everything into itself. Kai's footsteps made almost no noise on the thick carpet of needles that had been accumulating for longer than his village had existed. They walked slowly, reverently, and Kai felt the way he'd felt entering a temple as a child, aware that he was in the presence of something vast. Finally, they came to a clearing created not by absence of trees, but by the presence of one tree so enormous that nothing else could grow in its shadow. Kai stopped and stared upward. The tree was beyond ancient. Its trunk was wider than the cabin they'd been living in, its bark so thick and gnarled, it looked more like stone than wood. Branches as thick as normal trees spread outward and upward, creating a canopy that seemed to hold up the sky. Roots emerged from the earth like the backs of whales, creating a landscape of their own around the tree's base. This tree has stood here for 800 years, Master Yu said quietly. Maybe more. It has wisdom that makes my small knowledge look like a child's first words. Kai felt tears rising. Something about the tree's presence, its patient endurance through centuries of storms and seasons, its absolute rootedness in this one place while the world changed around it, moved something deep in him. Master Yu approached the tree and placed both palms against its bark. He stood in silence for a long moment, eyes closed, breathing slowly. Then he stepped back and gestured for Kai to come forward. "Place your hands on it," he said. "Listen." Kai hesitated, then stepped forward and placed both hands against the rough surface of the trunk. At first, he felt only texture, roughness, the slight dampness of moss, warmth from where the sun touched the trunk. Nothing remarkable. "Breathe with it," Master Yu said softly. "Wait. Listen not with your ears, but with your whole body. Trees speak slowly. Be patient." Kai closed his eyes and began to breathe consciously. He let his breath slow and deepen, let his body relax against the tree, let his mind quiet. Minutes passed, or maybe longer. Time felt strange here. And then, so gradually, he almost missed it. He began to feel something. A pulse. Subtle. So subtle, he wasn't sure if he was imagining it. But there it was again, a slow throb of life, moving through the wood beneath his palms. Not like a heartbeat, slower, more fundamental, like the tide or the seasons. The tree was alive. He'd known that intellectually, but knowing it as a fact and feeling it directly, viscerally, as undeniable presence, that was completely different. The aliveness beneath his hands was immense, patient, powerful, in a way that had nothing to do with force and everything to do with endurance, with deep rootedness, with absolute commitment to this one place, living, growing, reaching toward light, while simultaneously reaching toward darkness, holding earth and sky together. He felt the tree's roots extending deep into the earth, deeper than the tree was tall, spreading wide, drawing water and minerals from soil. And he felt the branches reaching upward and outward, thousands of leaves breathing, photosynthesizing, transforming sunlight into sugar, air into wood, creating life from light. The tree was a bridge between earth and sky, between darkness and light, between the deep mineral silence of soil and the bright flowing air above. It stood at the intersection of elements, rooted in earth, drinking water, breathing air, fed by fire that is sunlight, and transformed all of them into this massive, patient presence. And Kai realized he was also a bridge. He too stood between earth and sky, his feet on ground and his head in air. He too breathed and ate and drank, transforming elements into his own flesh and blood and bone. He too was made from the same substances as this tree, just arranged differently, expressing life in a different form. The boundary between himself and the tree began to blur, not in a mystical way, but as simple recognition of fact. The oxygen in his lungs had been created by trees like this one. The carbon in his body had been cycling through the living world for billions of years. They were exchanging substance with every breath, literally becoming part of each other moment by moment. The water in his blood came from the same sources as the water in this tree's sap, rain from clouds, from oceans, from rivers that trees like this one helped create. The minerals in his bones were the same minerals in this tree's wood, drawn from the same earth, part of the same great cycling of elements. He wasn't separate from the tree, from the forest, from the earth. He'd never been separate. Separation was an illusion, a story his mind had told him. Tears flowed freely now. He was crying from relief, from homecoming, from the ending of a loneliness so fundamental he'd carried it all his life without knowing what it was. The loneliness of believing he was separate, isolated, fundamentally alone. But he'd never been alone. He'd always been part of this, part of the tree and the forest and the earth and the great community of living things, all breathing and eating and growing and dying and being reborn. His hands still on the tree's bark, Kai understood without words what belonging meant. Master Yu's voice came soft from behind him. The Buddha found awakening under a tree, not in a temple or palace. He sat beneath the Bodhi tree and awakened to the truth of interbeing, that nothing exists separately, that everything arises in relationship. Kai opened his eyes but kept his hands on the tree. Nature is our first teacher, our truest home, Master Yu continued. We came from this, not metaphorically, but literally. Every element in your body was once in the earth, was once in plants and animals, was once in stars that died billions of years ago. You're not a visitor in nature. You are nature, looking at itself. Kai finally stepped back and turned to look at Master Yu through tear-blurred eyes. My illness came from disconnection, he said slowly. From forgetting this, from believing I was separate and alone. Master Yu nodded. And your healing? Remembering connection, Kai finished. Remembering I belong, that I'm part of this web, not outside it. They sat together at the base of the ancient tree, looking out at the forest that surrounded them. Kai's eyes moved from tree to tree, from ferns to birds to insects to mushrooms, sprouting from fallen logs. Everything was connected. That tree fed from soil that was fed by fallen leaves that were fed by sun. The bird ate insects that ate plants, that ate light, that came from the sun, that came from clouds of gas, that came from previous stars, that exploded and scattered their substance across space. Everything led to everything. Every being depended on every other being. The web was so vast, so intricate, so incomprehensibly complex that the mind couldn't hold it, but the heart could feel it, the body could know it. "We never left nature," Master Yu said quietly. "That's the great forgetting. People think they've left nature behind, that they live apart from it, in their villages and cities. But you can't leave nature. You're breathing it right now. You're eating it with every meal. Your body is nature, not a house you live in, but the very substance of the living earth, walking around, looking through eyes." "We just forgot," he continued. "Your healing journey hasn't been about learning something new. It's been about remembering what you always knew, but had forgotten." They sat in silence for a long time as the afternoon sun moved across the sky, creating patterns of light and shadow that shifted and changed moment by moment. When they finally stood to walk back, Kai felt fundamentally changed. He was not a separate self, struggling against a hostile world. He was a wave in the ocean of life, distinct but not separate, individual but not isolated, unique but not alone. He was nature becoming conscious of itself. As they walked back toward the cabin, Kai noticed everything with new eyes. The 8 techniques Master Yu had taught him weren't separate teachings at all. They were all pointing to the same fundamental truth, just approaching it from different angles. Breath connected him to air and all breathing beings. Meditation connected him to the vast awareness that holds all things. Mindful eating connected him to soil and sun and rain. Water taught him flow. Movement reminded him he was embodied. Plants offered their medicine freely, showing him interconnection. Sound and silence taught him that opposites are one, and nature revealed the ultimate truth. There is no separation. All of it was one teaching. Wake up, pay attention, remember you belong, live fully in this precious, temporary, miraculous gift of being alive. Wholeness, connection, presence, life itself, in all its forms, all its expressions, all its infinite creativity. This was what Master Yu had given him, not techniques to master, but eyes to see what had always been true. The fire crackled softly in the cabin's small hearth, casting warm light across the simple room where Kai and Master Yu sat facing each other for the last time. Outside, Night had settled over the mountains. Inside, silence held them both, the rich, full silence of two people who had shared a profound journey together. Kai was leaving in the morning. His body, which had been weak and failing when he arrived 6 weeks ago, was now strong and vital. But the healing went far deeper than physical restoration. He had been transformed, not into someone new, but into who he'd always been, beneath the layers of fear and disconnection. The illness had forced him to stop, to seek, to open himself to teachings he would never have sought otherwise. Master Yu studied Kai's face in the firelight. "You came seeking cure," he said quietly. "You found something else." "I found myself," Kai said. "Not the self I thought I was, the separate, struggling self, but the self that's connected to everything, that was never really separate at all." They sat in silence for a long time, comfortable and complete. The fire popped and shifted. Finally, Master Yu spoke again. "The techniques I showed you, they're keys." He paused. "But you are the door." Kai leaned forward, listening. "Healing isn't what I gave you," Master Yu continued. "I only reminded you of what you already knew, what you'd forgotten, what was always within you, waiting to be remembered." He shifted by the fire. "The techniques are useful, paths that others have walked before, but they work because you brought yourself to them fully, because you were ready to remember." Kai felt tears rising. These weeks had opened something in him that wept easily now, not from sadness, but from the recognition of truth. "The real teacher was never me," Master Yu said. "It was your breath, your body, the water, the trees, the silence, your own direct experience of being alive." The fire crackled, filling the pause. "When you leave here tomorrow, you're not leaving the teachings behind," Master Yu said. "You're carrying them with you because they were never outside you to begin with." Master Yu poured tea for both of them. They drank in silence, savoring the simple act. After a while, Master Yu set down his cup. "When you return home, people will ask what I taught you," he said. "What will you say?" Kai considered this carefully. "I'll tell them to breathe," he said slowly. "To actually feel their breath, to be present for it." He paused. "I'll tell them to be still sometimes, to sit and watch their minds without being swept away by every thought. I'll tell them to notice what they're eating, to taste their food, to remember that every meal connects them to soil and sun and rain." His voice grew stronger. "I'll tell them to learn from water, to be flexible, to flow around obstacles. I'll tell them to move their bodies with awareness, to remember that movement is medicine and prayer." The teachings flowed through him naturally. "I'll tell them about plants and their generous medicine, about sound and silence being one thing, about touching trees and remembering they were never separate from nature. He stopped and said simply, "I'll tell them to remember they're alive, and that being alive is enough." Master Yu nodded slowly. "Good," he said. "But remember this too." He shifted forward, his face serious. The Buddha's last words were these: "All things pass away. Work out your own salvation with diligence." He let this settle. "Not my salvation, Kai. Your own. Each person's own. When you teach these techniques to others, and I hope you will, remember that you're inviting them to their own direct experience, their own discovery." Master Yu's eyes held his. Every person must walk their own path. What worked for you might work differently for them. Trust their process, just as I trusted yours. Kai absorbed this, understanding the responsibility of carrying these teachings back to his village. "And remember this most important thing," Master Yu continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "Suffering ends not when we escape life or achieve some perfect state. Suffering ends when we stop fighting life, stop fighting ourselves, stop resisting what is. The 8 techniques aren't about escaping your humanity," he said. "They're about embracing it fully, the pain and the joy, the health and the sickness, all of it. When you stop fighting, when you open to what is, when you remember you're part of something vast and connected, then suffering transforms. Not because difficult things go away, but because you meet them differently." Kai sat with this teaching, feeling its truth settle into his bones. They talked late into the night about life, about Kai's village, about Master Yu's own journey to this mountain decades ago. Just 2 human beings sharing space and time, present for each moment as it arose and passed away. When they finally rose to sleep, both knew tomorrow would bring parting. The night was complete as it was. Morning came soft and golden. Kai packed his small bag, the same one he'd arrived with, but somehow it felt lighter now, despite carrying the herbs Master Yu had insisted he take for the journey home. Master Yu stood at the cabin door, the morning light catching his white hair and beard. They faced each other, and for a long moment, neither spoke. Then they embraced, a long, full embrace that said everything words couldn't. Gratitude, love, respect, blessing, goodbye, and not goodbye, all woven together. When they stepped apart, Kai picked up his bag and walked to the edge of the clearing. He turned back once to look at Master Yu still standing in the doorway, hand raised in blessing, not a wave goodbye, but a gesture of benediction, of trust. Kai raised his own hand in response, then turned and began walking down the mountain path. With each step, the cabin behind him grew smaller until the trees swallowed it completely, and it disappeared. But Kai carried the proof in his healthy body, his clear mind, his open heart. He was alone now, but not lonely. The solitude felt different, not isolation, but peaceful independence. He was alone the way a tree is alone, or a mountain, distinct and individual, but never truly separate from the vast web that holds all things. As he walked, he practiced his breathing, noticed the morning bird song, felt his feet touching the earth with each step. Everything Master Yu had taught him was available right here, right now, in this simple act of walking down a mountain path. He was carrying the teachings home, yes, but more than that, he was becoming them, embodying them, living them with each breath and step. And soon he would share them with others who were ready to remember, who were ready to wake up to the gift of being alive. He thought of his village waiting below, his family, his neighbors, the people who had watched him leave sick and desperate 6 weeks ago. They would barely recognize him now, not just because his body had healed, but because something essential had changed. He would teach them what he'd learned, but gently, without force, trusting that those who were ready would hear, and those who weren't would find their own paths in their own time. He would live the teachings rather than preach them. The morning sun warmed his shoulders as he walked. Birds called from the trees. A breeze carried the scent of pine and wildflowers. Everything was exactly as it should be, not perfect, but complete in this moment, whole in this breath. Kai smiled, took a deep conscious breath, and continued down the mountain path, toward home, toward the rest of his life, toward whatever came next. He was ready, not because he had all the answers, but because he'd learned to live the questions, to embrace uncertainty, to trust the process of being alive. The path wound downward through the forest, and Kai followed it with a light heart, carrying Master Yu's blessing and the 8 keys to healing, ready to share them with a world that needed them as much as he once had. Kai walked back through the mountains, retracing the path he'd climbed 6 weeks ago. The landscape was the same rocks, the same trees, the same views over valleys and ridges. But his eyes were different. Everything had become a teacher. He passed the stream where Master Yu had taught him about water, and he paused to watch it flow around stones, patient and persistent, never stopping. The lesson lived in him now, part of how he moved through the world. A bird sang from a high branch, and instead of passing it unnoticed, Kai stopped and listened, really listened, to the sound and the silence between each phrase. The cave's teaching echoing in this simple morning song. Wildflowers bloomed along the trail, and Kai knelt to look closely at one, seeing how it grew from soil, how it reached toward light, how it belonged completely to the earth that fed it. He touched it gently, feeling connection rather than separation. His body was strong now, his breath deep and easy, his mind clear as mountain air. The journey that had nearly killed him on the way up felt effortless now, not because the path was easier, but because he was different. He flowed like water, moved with awareness, rested when his body asked for rest, ate when hungry, drank when thirsty, listened to the simple wisdom of being alive. After 3 days of walking, he reached the boundaries of his village. Familiar sights emerged: the bend in the river where children played, the old pine tree that marked the edge of cultivated fields, the smell of cook fires, and the sound of voices he'd known all his life. He was home. His mother saw him first. She'd been working in the garden and looked up at the sound of footsteps on the path. Her face went through shock, disbelief, recognition, then joy so pure it broke open into tears. "Kai!" she cried, running to him, her hands reaching to touch his face, his shoulders, his arms, as if to confirm he was real. "You're healed." Kai embraced his mother, feeling her shake with sobs of relief. "I'm whole," he said quietly into her hair. Word spread quickly through the village. By evening, neighbors had gathered at Kai's family home, filling the courtyard, sitting on the ground around a fire, eager to hear what had happened to the young man who'd left them dying and returned radiating health. Kai sat by the fire and told his story. Not preaching, not lecturing, just sharing simply what had happened. The journey to find Master Yu, the cabin in the mountains, the 8 practices that had transformed him. People listened with complete attention. When he spoke of breathing consciously, of meditation, of eating with awareness, they leaned forward, hungry for something they couldn't name but recognized. "Show us," someone said. "Teach us to breathe the way you learned." Kai smiled. "Close your eyes," he said gently. "Just feel your breath, in and out. That's all. Just notice." Around the fire, people closed their eyes and breathed together. Some cried, some smiled, some simply sat in the peace of paying attention for perhaps the first time in their lives. Kai realized in that moment that he wasn't just healed, he'd become a healer. Not through grand gestures or complicated knowledge, but through simple presence, through willingness to share what had been freely given to him. Days passed, and Kai began teaching in earnest. Each morning before dawn, he met a small group in the village square and led them through the movement practice Master Yu had taught him. Arms rising with breath, weight shifting from foot to foot, bodies remembering what minds had forgotten. He helped families start kitchen gardens with medicinal plants, valerian for sleep, ginger for digestion, mint for clarity. He taught them to harvest with gratitude, to prepare remedies with care, to listen to what their bodies needed. He encouraged mindful eating, showing people how to slow down, to taste their food, to feel the nourishment entering their bodies. Meals became ceremonies of gratitude rather than rushed necessities. It wasn't grand or dramatic. It was simple, daily, real, the kind of transformation that happens slowly, like water wearing stone, like seeds becoming trees. The wisdom began to spread like ripples from a stone dropped in still water, touching one person, then another, then their family, then their neighbors. Master Yu's teachings were taking root in this village, growing in new soil, adapting to new conditions, bearing fruit in new forms. Kai understood his purpose now. He wasn't the last student of Master Yu, he was the next teacher. His role was to be a light that lit other lights, a flame that shared itself without diminishing, a bridge between the ancient wisdom hidden in mountains and the people who needed it in their everyday lives. Kai's journey is every journey. His healing is every healing. The 8 techniques he learned, conscious breathing, meditation, mindful eating, learning from water's flow, moving with awareness, receiving plant medicine, listening to sound and silence, remembering connection with all of nature, they're yours now too. These aren't things to achieve or master. They're ways to remember what you never lost, your aliveness, your belonging, your wholeness. You don't need to climb a mountain or find a hermit. The healing Kai found is already within you, waiting to be remembered. Start anywhere. One breath, fully felt. One moment of stillness, watching your mind without judgment. One bite savored completely. One step taken with full awareness. One glass of water drunk with gratitude. One movement that honors your body. One plant that teaches you patience. One sound that opens silence. One moment touching earth and remembering you belong. Not tomorrow, when everything is perfect. Not when life gets easier, or you have more time, or conditions are ideal. Now, here, with exactly what you have, exactly as you are. Some days you'll forget. You'll eat mindlessly, breathe unconsciously, rush through your day disconnected from your body and the world around you. That's not failure. That's being human. You just begin again, and again, and again. Each return is the practice. Before you go, if this story touched something in you, share one word in the comments. Just one. The technique that called to you most. Let's see what our global community needs right now. And if this helped, if you found something here worth keeping, subscribe. I'll keep sharing paths to peace, stories of healing, reminders that you're not alone on this journey. Wherever you are right now, in Tokyo, or London, or Sao Paulo, or somewhere I can't imagine, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for walking this path with Kai, and with me, and with everyone else who needs these ancient and simple truths. May you breathe easily. May you find stillness when you need it. May you move with grace and eat with gratitude, and remember, always, that you were never broken. You were always whole. These 8 keys will be here whenever you need them. This story, this sanctuary, always waiting. Until next time, peaceful friend, breathe easy,